Welcome to the show, everyone. Tonight we have Alena Ericksen, and Alena has taken on a daunting task of digging through laws and legal code.
And she likes to read this stuff.
Okay, we don't have to talk about her being crazy off the start, Dave. We can introduce her gently to the show. But she is digging through the code. She's doing this work for us, and she's doing it to hold um, our last governor, our current governor, and probably more than them, probably mayors and everywhere else, and up the chain, senators and maybe all the way up to a president, to hold them accountable to their actions that's gone on over the last year, such as locking people down with edicts and such as abusing certain rights they perceive they have. But let's have Alena tell us how she got started in this, what kind of led her into it.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. Yeah, I too was awoken. I mean, I've always been a classical constitutionalist. I've always studied. I love American history. I have a great respect for our founding fathers and a love for our country. But what really woke me up in 2020 was it just didn't feel right. I think every one of us would do the right thing. We would do anything to help our neighbors, to save a life, to protect, the vulnerable. But what I saw and felt was anything but that. It was just a play on to see what they could get away with. And so for me, just seeing the elderly isolated broke my heart. What was happening with the schools and the kids, and they were the first ones to have a mask mandate. To see what was happening with businesses, the closures, the churches, that was alarming. I mean, we're a pretty religious state. And to
Just
have
a little bit.
churches, yeah, and to have churches closed down, I thought, okay, there's a lot of red flags going on here. And, I had a little team that I was working with. One of them, her name's Sarah, she's a natural doctor, and she was willing to write the affidavit. And I have a friend of mine that I came across. He was like a mentor to me. And he said, we have to start these affidavits. You have to have an affidavit to create a case. And so for me, I wanted to try the system. Most people think when, a violation has happened against their rights, they need to hire an attorney and just go straight to court. For me, I looked at it in a different light. And I said, we have police officers that are supposed to have an oath. And furthermore, my mentor mentioned the power of a sheriff. A sheriff is an elected officer, law enforcement officer, and he has direct power to arrest a governor.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to target the two counties over Herbert and Cox, and I did. So the other thing, before I get into that story, I wanted to use and utilize our state general attorney. So I got Sean Reyes' personal cell phone, and I texted him and I said, hey, I'm getting public speaking appearances. This is gaining more attention. The people, lives are at risk, and we have Utah Patriot leaders uniting. We need you to act on this. So I'll give a little side tidbit of the Attorney General. At the bare minimum, the Attorney General, he has the authority in the Utah Criminal Code to enforce and to protect the Antitrust Act. Mm-hmm. That specifically appoints him to manage commerce. So he's supposed to be careful that there's no monopolies going on, that there's not an interruption in regular price in commerce, in the competitive pricing of materials and goods.
Then by them putting mandates that put small businesses at risk, but strengthening mandates that allowed the large box stores to stay open, that kind of broke that, didn't it?
Yes. So we need to know these things. We've got to hold these guys accountable. This is why we elect them. Mm-hmm. And so I had the opportunity to talk with two of his counselors. One of them, when I had to correct, he was very indignant with me and pretty arrogant. And I had to, his name is Alan Crooks. And I had to remind him that he works for the people and that I hope that he wouldn't treat me like that again and that we could have a good working relationship. And I never heard from him again. So then.
So he showed you he wasn't willing to.
That was your working relationship right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He didn't, these guys get in these positions and they think they're so elite. They think they're above the people. And we have to remind them, no, you work for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have to remember that. That's crucial. And just the mere fact that if people recognize their natural rights, like all of these things that we have to protect us, that comes from us. And we need to make sure that we're acting in a manner that's guaranteeing those rights. Otherwise we give them away. And that's the danger of it.
So let's dive into specifically the affidavits that you gathered. Let's dive into those specifics.
Okay. So I collected the affidavits. Of course, a lot of them revolved around masks, but there were several of them of people confirming, I missed out on this lifetime event, or, I organized all the affidavits into suicide or high risk. There were other ones that I organized into, business claims. There's some that were fraud. I had two nurses, like two in the medical field, that were willing to come forward with the fraud, but they changed their mind last minute.
Is that fraud? Is that fraud on reporting or numbers? What's that fraud on?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
well, how many? Here's another question: how many loved ones passed away or received bad care in hospitals due to nobody being able to be in there to advocate for a family member?
I don't know about that one.
Well, we may never know, but I'm sure that number's huge, Yeah.
I know I have a friend, her husband's a heart doctor, and he's had more patients die at home because they're afraid to go into the hospital. So they just die.
Yeah. How many people foregone that getting the, I don't know, heart measuring cardiogram or EKG or whatever. How many people just avoided that this last summer?
And I've heard a story from a nurse stating that the hospitals would actually relocate the patients to different wings just for capacity numbers and reporting, and really no other reason. And she felt that was wrong, but like, what can you do? I kind of see the nurse's point of view. I mean, they have a job and they don't want to get in trouble, and we know how whistleblowers end up living in Russia and stuff around here. So
yeah,
right. It's complex, and there's a lot of different things that come into play. One of the most, and I always tell this story, but one of the most sad affidavits I have is from a mother who's testifying that her 6-year-old for the first time is suicidal. She doesn't want to wear the mask. She doesn't want to social distance. She doesn't want to live like this. My own nephew was in school, and he's supposed to be in kindergarten, first grade, and they took all the balls away. They took all the play equipment. They wouldn't let him play and hang out at recess, and they just had to sit there with a mask on at recess. I mean, these kids don't want to live like that. So, another really sad, tragic story was a husband who was handed the phone when the nurses said, your wife's dying and you can't go in there to be with her. Let's just give you the phone to say goodbye. It's just, all of these things. And I thought, this is why I'm doing this. This is so important. So, getting back to, I have about 700 pages of documentation, but getting back to the sheriffs. So I went and I visited with Utah County Sheriff Mike Smith first. And let's rewind. Back in October, I had a conversation with him on the phone. And it was like this heart-to-heart conversation. I mean, he's a good man. I don't doubt that he's a good man. And I know what I asked him to do was totally out of normal. But I said, what can you do to arrest Herbert? That's what I want. And he needs to be arrested for the crimes that are being committed against the people. I didn't have all the affidavits yet in October, but I was just sharing with him how it had impacted my family and my children. and our income. We have some Airbnbs. We lost money on those. And so he just had this heart. He said, let me think about it. And he just kind of evaded the idea for a long time. And finally, I was able to get in with him on December 21st. By then, I had collected a bunch of affidavits, and I had the stacks organized in front of me of the hard copies of everything. And there were 2 investigators in there, and they just kind of hummed and hawed. And I was really concerned that one of the investigators actually told me he didn't know what Dominion was. That, this is during the election time. I'm like, how can you be an investigator and not know, Trump and the election and Dominion? Like, this is the investigator that's going to handle this case, and I was really concerned about it. I quoted federal code. It's federal code title 18, 241 and 242. And both of those talk about you cannot act out of color in law. So you can't pretend something is a law when it's not law, when it hasn't gone through the process of legislation. And number 2, you can't threaten, coerce, fine, punish, intimidate under color of law. Well, what just happened to us? I mean, all those things.
That's what they were doing. They were threatening, had to have. I mean, at one point, they were talking about trying to issue essential persons IDs so you could go to work. Now, maybe he woke up in the middle of the night and thought, well, that's a goddamn bridge too far. Maybe I ought not do that. But he'll still put out mask mandates without it running through any kind of legislative process.
Right. And when I quoted those quotes, they were familiar with them, and they said, we can't do anything with federal code. It has to be Utah code. So if you have a code that goes with these affidavits, then that's fine. And I said, okay, I will do my homework. I said, but let me tell you something. I said, whatever you need, I will get it. I will find it. I said, if this is not enough, if all of this paper and this documentation is not enough, then I will find whatever it is you need, because it's out there. Mm-hmm. And I left the office and I was frustrated. And this was December 21st. So I spent Christmas holiday opening up the federal code Utah booklet, and I read the 417 pages. And as I was reading it, I was in a unique position because I just read all the affidavits. So I could copy and paste, I have an affidavit for that. I have an affidavit for that one. And my takeaway from that experience is I realized how protected we are. There's like a code for everything. I mean, little things, big things. The texts that, Herbert sent out that were, frightening people. Cases are rising, people are dying. You're going to get a $10,000 fine if you don't obey mask mandates. Like, you can't do that to people. You can't, that was totally illegal for him to do that. So that was included in there. As I mentioned, isolating elderly, preventing people from going to funerals, taking the vulnerable, like the elderly and even the handicapped or children, and then causing them harm. So if you look at any way that you can cause harm, that could be psychological, that could be fear, isolation, making somebody wear a mask, making somebody wear or put on constant sanitizers or hand sanitizers that are chafing the skin and cracking the kids' hands, or the mask. A lot of the affidavits say it causes me a reaction in my lungs, and it triggers seizures. So for some people, they have a condition that was triggering seizures. And so yet they can't get a job. And most of the time they can't go to the store unless they allegedly wear a mask. So how are people supposed to survive? Mm-hmm. You name it, there's a code for it. When Herbert got the youth and he gathered the youth and said, your parents are being foolish, and the least that we can do, if your parents are rallying and protesting against the mask, they're being foolish.
So, he did that? He rallied the children to tell them that?
They made a news broadcast on that. And they had these kids believing and saying on air, our parents are just being foolish. The least that we can do is put on a mask so we can participate in school activities. Mm. And there's a legislative code that says government cannot infringe on the parental rights of rearing and raising and teaching of their children.
Yep. Can't undermine the parent.
Right. Well, and so, I said, there's a code for all of this stuff. And the biggest one that I brought to the table was domestic terrorism. You can see it in society. You can feel it. People are afraid. They were treating each other like garbage because there's this mass conflict and social distancing conflict, and families are getting divided because some people believe this is a real threat and other people don't. And I mean, you can just see it like dividing society, and it's quite sad.
Alena, where does it bridge the line to be informing someone of hygiene versus threat in this scenario? Can you define that line for me a little bit? Because I can kind of understand saying, wash your hands, put some alcohol on. If you wear a mask, you're less likely to receive an infection. But there's a line where that was crossed. Can you tell me where it becomes criminal?
Okay, so a couple of thoughts there. As I mentioned to you guys before the show, there's a criminal code that prohibits people from posing in a licensed profession, if they do not have a degree or they're not licensed in that. When Herbert and Cox stand in front of the people and tell people, hey, this is going to save lives, you have to do this, this prevents, XYZ disease, and we recommend you doing that. We recommend you doing XYZ. They're acting as the people's physician, and they're not licensed to do so. So I'm going to borrow the words from House Bill 169 that references natural disasters, and I think the wording is perfect. In there, when it talks about if we actually have an earthquake or heaven forbid a tornado here or something like that, where we have like a catastrophe of some kind that the government's got to get involved to help the people, it says in there, government can advise and recommend to the public. And that's where it begins and ends. Now, to define the threat, we're going to borrow the words from Cornell law. And Cornell law states that in order to call somebody a threat and to be considered a direct threat, they need to have a qualified physician using scientific approved methods to assess somebody. So we can't just say, oh, you're walking around, you're a threat, I've got to be afraid of you. And then that person not only has to assess the threat, they have to figure out how to mitigate it or lessen it, or what kind of preventative measures need to happen. So we can't just talk about the entire public being a threat. So that breaks those two right there. Mm-hmm. And I think where it becomes criminal is when we're, again, acting out of color of law, where we're forcing, intimidating, threatening, fining, those things. The government can recommend, like Kristi Noem had this right. The governor of South Dakota, she never shut down her state, yep. She never closed down businesses, churches, schools, nothing. She says, I'm going to just advise my people and then trust them to make the best decisions.
Yeah, she's still, she come through this outstanding. I like what Kristi Noem did. I like what the guy in Florida is doing.
Yeah, DeSantis, he's amazing. He's out there fighting.
I like how he doesn't let the media pull one over on him. He doesn't just tell them, hey, you guys are speaking bullshit. He says, no, here's the fact, and lays it out. So he packs that boldness that we saw with Trump, but he also packs some intelligence and knowledge that I think Trump lacked in a couple of areas.
Ben Shapiro interviewed him a little bit, and, DeSantis was in a good position where he kind of almost like, he just did the research himself. Mm-hmm. He didn't just rely on his advisors or people around him. He's just like, no, which I think is the problem with Cox. He's relying a lot on the health department and the opinions there.
That's probably true. And right now we're looking at, I wish I could remember the name, but there was a book written by early 1900s socialist who, Pepper Potter or something. He mentioned, he called it the capture of the scientists, I think he said. And it's where the scientists and the technologically advancing people, we will look to them for so much that they get big heads, and then they start reining in on everything. And it's later on they called it a technocracy, but he talked about the capture of the scientists, and it's happened previously in history. And I think that's what we're looking at. Right now, they're the heroes. I mean, Fauci, honestly, I don't think Fauci could find his ass if both of his hands were in his back pockets. But
does anybody believe him anymore?
Jesus
Christ.
I
just feel like it's a play. I feel like it's just a play.
Honestly, I think it's just that he gets off on being in front of cameras. because he changes his mind every day on what we're supposed to do, what's supposed to be done. He continually changes.
He lost me at 2 masks. I mean, can you think of anything less?
He lost
effective?
me when he said in March, don't buy masks. And then came out in, what was it, June, and said, now you have to buy masks and wear masks. That's when he lost me. Either he was lying before or he was trying to pander after.
Well, you got to understand the mindset of this community. Like, so I'm in the safety business, and before Corona, you're looking for masks that are not NIOSH approved, and you're going to point at that person and say, naughty, naughty, you're bad. Now, society's like, who cares if it's NIOSH approved? We're wearing a mask because we got it, and these things are hard to find. And we've just totally done a 360 on the whole concept of safety and masks. Now we're wearing masks over and over again, and we're wearing dirty masks, and we're probably getting facial infections from wearing and reusing these masks repeatedly. And if that's a word, repeatedly.
Repeatedly, yeah.
But also, like, you got to also remember that coronavirus here, this COVID-19 doesn't even have a lethality of 1% when someone gets infected with this thing. Let's just turn the tables and say, well, what if this was a 50% lethality virus? What if? Would we still be pointing at our governors and politicians for these really strict mandates? And I'm just trying to give a little pushback, Jared. I know you don't like it. But
No, I agree.
let's think about this. Like, when the submarine's going down and you got to close the hatch and someone's on the other side, you're like, sorry, dude.
So you're what you're asking is if this had a fatality rate that was, say a 4% fatality rate, would we be pointing the fingers at the governors and everyone else
For sending a nasty text message and a threat with a fine? Not 4%. I don't know. I think maybe, you got to go above 10% to make it warrant of any type of lethality against the population from my perspective.
I would like to see it above that if they're going to shut down businesses.
Right. But let's just say, okay,
is there
maybe
ever a time? Is there ever a time to shut down a business? I mean, who
Well,
decides that?
right. Yeah, that's a good question.
Or to change the way business is done. I would say if we're living in the time of, they didn't shut them down for the Spanish flu, that had a pretty tremendous kill ratio, and it killed youth. It damn near targeted youth.
Well, and interesting, Fauci did a publication, I believe in 1993, where he talked about how masks were used and actually spread the virus.
Oh, shocking.
Actually, not even spread the virus, that it was bacterial infections that were causing the problems from the mask.
I heard there's a doctor in New Mexico right now that's posing a lawsuit specifically because of the bacterial infections he's seeing from the mask mandates they put in there.
It's got to be doing something. We're not supposed to be breathing and recycling our air that many hours a day.
Simply the loss of oxygen. If you've got to climb a flight of stairs with that mask on, losing that oxygen, does that have long-term effects?
I just want, when I go to the gym, I just want to go to the people with the mask and say, please,
Yeah.
I care about you. Please just take it off. Breathe for me. But, I guess people can do what they want to do. But yeah, I just don't think we're going to clean this up anytime soon. I don't
Nope.
think people are going to give it up.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's something we've noticed here. And we have good friends that are, it's sad to say that bought into this mask thing. And they all talk about, I'm high risk. And I want to ask them, are you in more danger of rebreathing your CO2 because of your COPD than you are of catching a wayward virus? I would argue when the doctors throw oxygen on you and then you throw something over your face to deplete your natural oxygen, might be a bit of a hazard worse with wearing the mask.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, where COPD, I mean, you drag an oxygen bottle around behind you, or you have one that you're, every so often you're required to have a communion with your tank.
And you know what? What if I decided to go around with a PAPR? That's the best you can get. You can't get any better. PAPRs are comfortable. They provide almost like an air-conditioned environment, and their filtration systems are 100% HEPA. And you want to know what? You know what they'd tell me? Oh, you can't wear that kind of mask.
Okay.
You know they would.
All right. He
They'd say
nerded
something
out.
like that.
I'm sorry, guys. A PAPR, I'm just going to shoot off the hip, is a positive airflow mask. It means it has a pump that pushes air into a hood. Am I correct?
Powered air respirator, PAPR,
Yeah.
something like that, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So he's nerding out,
But you know how they're saying, oh, you have a valve on your mask and you can't wear that on the airplane. Even though it's like 100% HEPA on the way in, they're worried about what's coming out. It almost seems like they want you to wear a dirty rag versus anything else. I mean, it's almost like they prefer it on your face.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but it just seems that way to me. And that's my intuition, I suppose.
I've got to do a side note. So I brewed a jalapeno beer, guys. What do you think, Dave?
It is very jalapeno.
It's not spicy at all.
It's not.
But it tastes like jalapenos. It smells like them too. It's gorgeous.
That's fun.
It is an interesting beer.
But anyways, go on.
I think it's important to go back to the sheriffs a little bit because they have so much power and that they can. Let's really take a look at what happened. So back when I had that conversation with Sheriff Smith back in October, I was complaining about somebody who was doing all these kinds of things to my family in October. And if that was anybody else, don't you think the sheriff would hop in the car and go have a conversation with the accused?
Well, I would hope so.
So why not?
Let's say it was a neighbor.
Yeah.
But I think the sheriff is, well, one, how many sheriffs do we elect that honestly understand their roles and their position? The sheriff is the top armed individual in all of government. He is above your FBI agents that try to come to your county. He can arrest an FBI agent. If he's told him not to come, he can arrest him for showing up in his county. He's the top dog. Mm-hmm. And how many sheriffs understand that? And how many sheriffs understand that their role and responsibility is to defend the county from whatever?
And really the job description is the Bill of Rights. Huh. They need to protect the Bill of Rights.
How many sheriffs in this nation do you think ignore that?
Probably all of them. I think they go under the guise that they are, because they're not enforcing the mandates, like they're not going to incriminate somebody or fine somebody or whatever, that they're following the Constitution, but we need to be protected from these crimes that are happening in society. I mean, let's just have anybody get up on state TV, a state channel on the TV, mm-hmm. and start talking about deaths every time, and mm-hmm. you're going to get fines and punishment, and that's all they do is talk about deaths and these case rates and overloaded hospitals, and we got to make sure we're doing this and stay away from people. And I mean, that's terrorism. That's domestic terrorism. Mm-hmm. There is a code for that: psychological domestic terrorism. And it's altering the way people are treating each other and the way they think about themselves and how they're engaging in life and managing their businesses and everything else. So yeah, the sheriff has the ultimate authority. And I know what I asked him to do was really hard. I know that's like scary. And I'm sure there's a deep state element to it that like, don't you dare. In fact, I had a conversation with my senator and he goes, yeah, I've been watching you. I've been following, I saw you on this live talk show and in Utah County, and he said, and you're not getting anywhere, are you, with those affidavits? And I said, well, actually they went to the DA's office. And he goes, DA where? At Utah County. But you're not in Utah County. I said, does it matter? Are there boundaries and borders and lines that can't be crossed with mm-hmm. criminal acts? So it's interesting because I have almost been on these guys all the time, like, where's an update? What's the case number? At least every other week, I'm following up. Guys, I need more information from the investigator and Mike Smith. And Mike Smith doesn't really talk to me anymore. He's having the investigator do it. And here's what's really interesting. So I was on with Stu Peters, and he's got like 72 million followers. And somehow he took my story, and I laugh because I was able to tell 72 million people the names of these sheriffs that have a case in front of them, and they're not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I challenged the country. Find me one good sheriff who's willing to be a hero and do the right thing. Because he would be a hero.
Yeah.
We don't have it. It's a problem. Well, guess who emailed me when I emailed him the video? By the way, guys, I just went national with this, and your names were mentioned. Guess who emailed me a case number?
Who's that?
The investigator, Utah County. So I went from the first part of January, almost to the first part of April. And
So
I finally got a case number.
they
Squeaky
sat
wheel.
on it. They sat on it until they looked like they were ignoring crimes.
So yeah, I mean, that's what it's going to take. It's going to take a bunch of us standing together. Now the the Sanpete County Sheriff, who's now over Cox, that's a different story. Sheriff Nilsson was the sheriff. I had this conversation with him briefly. He presented himself almost unremoved, like detached. He didn't really seem concerned. He was aloof about what I had to share.
Uh-huh.
And he didn't really say anything. I thought that was weird. But I sent him an email. I tried to follow up, didn't hear back. And so I called the office, and they said, oh, he left. He left and took a job with Cox. So sheriffs, I think they're elected for 4 years. He took a job with Cox midterm. So then the Republican delegates had to appoint a new sheriff, and I had to wait and wait and wait. And Sheriff Jared Buchanan is now the appointed sheriff over the Sanpete County. And so I emailed him, and I didn't mention who. All I said was, there's 2 criminals that have a lot of charges against them, and I have a lot of affidavits, and I need you to call me. I called 4 times in about 3 weeks and didn't hear back. And finally, I emailed him, and I said the same thing. There's 2 criminals with a lot of affidavits. I got 700 pages. And I said, I need you to contact me as soon as possible. And no reply. So then I got a demand to act, a notice of a demand to act that I notarized, signed, returned receipt, certified mail, everything in a hard copy, and sent that to him. Actually, both sheriffs. Still nothing. So then I called him the day before I was on with Stu Peters. Actually, I was on with Talk with John. And I said, I'm going to be on the air tomorrow, and I'm going to mention your name, and I'm going to mention what you're not doing unless I hear back from you. I'm hoping we can have a conversation. I'm hoping that we can work well together. And nothing that day. So I talked about that on the air with Talk with John, but I had to mention that also with Stu Peters out in Minnesota on his show. And I just pointed out the gross negligence of these sheriffs. When you have lives at stake, Utah County Sheriff Smith made a statement in October that there had been more than double the suicides, and yet he's not willing to act. And I just think, how can you attend these additional suicides? How can you see these businesses fold and see these children, masked up at the schools? These sheriffs could go in there anytime and say, this isn't law. I'm not enforcing this. But none of them are doing it.
Now,
so that has to be brought.
The office of the sheriff is an elected position, correct?
Yes.
And Governor Cox was elected as well. He was elected by the people of Utah. Now,
supposedly.
Now we all like to point our fingers at our politicians, but I'd like to be the popular guy to point our fingers at all of you who voted for someone who's not really all that liberty orientated from the beginning. I mean, we could see that a mile away, that Governor Cox was just another cog in the machine, and he was going to do what governors and politicians do, and everybody was fine with that. That is the level of capacity of the average Utah citizen. And
Well, we have to consider something too, though. Dominion was used in Utah, Salt Lake, and Davis counties. And that was part of what I had, that I wanted an investigation. I also wanted an investigation over the Rockefeller money that Herbert admitted he took on August 6, 2020. So we have money coming into play. In Utah, we took like $104 billion for federal COVID money. That's like double some of the other states. Where did that money go? And so these are some serious, legit charges that I'm saying, where we have evidence of this. Where did it go?
Alena, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Am I going to get Clintoned walking home today after this conversation? just wondering.
I don't know. I already had a death threat, and I've decided it's just not my time to go. So yeah, I really doubt that Cox was really popular. I helped Greg Hughes with his campaign.
So did
and
I.
he had such a surge. He was really doing well. And then all of a sudden Cox won. And Cox asked him at a later time, like, how did you do that? How did you get such a surge? And he's like, number one, I'm a Trump supporter and you're not. So that kind of hurts you. If you can't back up our president, you know?
Yeah,
but anyway.
I stand apart on all that. I don't vote. I don't get involved in that. I see the government as an organized crime family that people, try to get the people that they commit crimes on to elect them into.
Mm-hmm.
Vote for me. I'll wear a fuzzy glove when I put that gun to your head and rob you every year. And that's how I see it.
Well, it's definitely not being ran the way it should be. And that's where David, he brought out the perfect point. We need to look at ourselves. We need to look at ourselves and say, are we voting bad people in? Or are we just disengaged from the whole process, the political process? Are we disengaged from standing up for what's right and fighting for liberty? If we are, we really only have ourselves to blame. And that is why I feel like the action that I took to get the sheriffs involved is such a powerful message. Because we need to hold our government accountable. If we don't have law enforcement, what else do we have?
Here's a question I've got. Do you think now the new sheriff come in down there, do you think that the Republican Party kind of gave him a heads up? I mean, not just the outgoing sheriff, but where you said the Republican council got together and, filled that slot with him. Do you think that they gave him a heads up as a party saying, look, we don't want this shade coming back on us?
I actually talked to one of the delegates. I was very interested. In fact, I was going to help support a candidate for that position because of my project. I wanted to make sure we got a good sheriff in there. And his registration eligibility had expired 2 months before, so he couldn't run. But he would have been fantastic. He wouldn't have hesitated once to do what we're talking about. So anyway, having that conversation with that delegate, she said, well, most of us just want somebody who's not a Cox fan. We are sick of Cox. So that was telling. I think the guy that's in there, he's young. In fact, he did finally call me back about 3 days after my talk with John. And he's like, hey, Alena, this is Sheriff Buchanan. What can I do for you? And I said, oh, thank you. I appreciate you calling me. I've, waited a while. I said, sorry, I've been really busy. And I said, okay, well, did you get my email? And he goes, yeah, I got your email. I said, okay, so then you know what I'm asking you to do. And he goes, yeah. I said, yes, I want an investigation. I want a case opened. And he said, okay, there's a lot of stuff there. It's going to take some time. And I said, okay, that's fine. I said, I'm just asking for a case number as soon as possible. And he said, well, I'm really busy. If I forget to get it to you, then call me back. So that was about a week ago. I need to call him back and say, what's the case number?
Mm-hmm.
I'm also staying on top of the Attorney General, who doesn't really comment. I mean, these guys think they're untouchable. And my message and the thing that I'm proving is that we're lulled into complacency and security and a false sense of security that we have the police on our side. I was heavily involved at the Capitol with the legislative session, and particularly with Senate Bill 195. I don't know if you guys know about that bill.
No, lay it out for us.
So, and this story does have to do with our police, and I'll get to that in a minute. But Senate Bill 195 borrows the original language from Utah Title Code 26 that talks about the emergency provisions of what to do with a health emergency. And there is horrible draconian language in there, like orders of constraint, house arrest, restrict movement, alter or monitor behavior, close down businesses, churches, schools, all this kind of stuff. That's been in there at least since 2009. I don't know who put it in there. I don't know when it was put in there. But what they tried to do with Senate Bill 195, and I even spoke on the floor about it and against it, and it was being sold as better, because right now, before in Title 26, it gave the governor all the power to do those things and to perpetually declare a state of emergency. So they sold it to the legislators, with the idea that we can distribute the power so legislators can actually, after the first executive order of a health emergency, they can stop it at 30 days, or they can extend it with ample evidence that there actually is a state of emergency, and they can extend it, I think, up to 60 more days, so 90 days total.
So they get through 30 days of free reign.
So the governor, yes.
And then if they can, by their own recognition, prove that it was needed, extend it for another 60 days. So they can get 90 days out of, honestly, it could be horseshit.
So, and the original bill came up with a $10,000 fine. They were generous, and they reduced it to $5,000 for businesses and $150 per week per individual. Now, where we're at with the legislatures, there was one guy, I worked with Phil Lyman a lot on that bill, and I said, Phil, let's work together. I took that bill, and where it said government shall be able to close down government shall be able to, orders of constraint, all that horrible language. I said, let's just put a not in there. Government shall not. It changes the whole entire language. And then I said, Phil, we have to protect our kids. We've got to bring in that original legislation and say that parents are the ultimate authority over the medical decisions of their children. He put that in there. He liked the Cornell law about assessing somebody appropriately to consider them a threat. Anywhere it said control, I put recommend, borrowing the House Bill 169 with natural disasters. So I helped him rewrite some of this, and then I put in there, government can advise and recommend, but ultimately the responsibility of an individual's health is theirs. And guess who voted all of it out? 80% or more of them. Chris Jansen, he got up there and says, guys, I've taken an oath to protect the Constitution, to guarantee natural rights. We need to have that intent woven within this bill. And I have a screenshot. 80% of them voted no.
Was Tooele's representatives, were they a no vote, or?
I don't know. I don't know Tooele's well enough.
We've got
but
Doug Sagers.
People were tagging their representatives to my thing and saying, what do you have to say? Why did you vote against this? And the one lady said, because it's abnormal for us to have an intent woven within a bill. So my rebuttal to her was, everything we do, we have an intention. If you don't have an intention to write a bill, then what are you doing? And your oath to the people is to preserve their natural rights. So if that's not your intention, then what is? That needs to be the intention.
What was the bill again?
Senate Bill 195. So it's, you basically, legislature and that whole process is a tug of war. You got a lot of people that think they need to be a nanny state and just take control over and watch and guard the people over maybe self-importance, that they need to be doing something. I don't know, but it's bad. But my point with the police is that I was very active at the Capitol, and I learned the hard way, almost the futile experience that was to be involved with such a big agenda, with lobbyists, with private interest groups that are paying them to vote certain ways. And I just realized like, it's like hypnotic when you go in there and these people are talking the way they do about protecting people. We did so well compared to other states. And I couldn't believe it. So, but basically back to the police, my experience at the Capitol was, I saw these highway patrol in a totalitarian state where they were so committed to defending the governor and his mandates that here I am in the people's house. The Capitol is the people's home, and there's a criminal code. It has been so helpful, by the way, for me to have read those. There is a criminal code that incriminates somebody for preventing you from going to a Senate hearing or a House bill hearing or to be involved in the legislature when they're in session. And so I had this experience. I was at the Capitol with a few ladies, and I'm sitting on a bench with them, and we said, hey, let's get a picture. So we asked one guy who's just guarding, he wasn't a police or anything. He was just a gentleman that was watching a door, and he came and took a shot of us. And then he said, now be careful. There's masked Nazis all over here. And I said, somebody next to me said, well, is that one of them? And he turned and he says, no. And it was a female highway patrol. And she was coming up the stairs. She was walking by us, about ready to just keep on moving. And he said, oh, I'm just telling them they need to wear masks. So he totally throws us under the bus. She pivots. She comes back around. She goes, yeah, that's right. You need to have masks on. And one lady next to me said, that's not law. Can you show me where it's law? And so this highway patrol is like fumbling, well, the legislative and the health department, well, it hasn't been passed.
Yeah.
So we're in this conversation. And this the lady next to me says, can you arrest us if we're not going to wear a mask? And she goes, yeah, actually I can. And then I was like, so I just looked at her.
Please. Please.
Yum, 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 yum.
Please, because I want you to lay out the law I broke in court. Please.
Yeah, that's what I said to her. I looked at her and I said, could you please tell me the attorney's name who issued the warrant for my arrest and the crime I committed?
Yep.
She didn't know what to say. You know what she did? She grabbed up her phone for backup. You got 5 women there, and she grabbed up her phone for backup. And
she wanted I need some big guys in here, bigger guys than me.
Yeah, because that's what they're going to do. They're going to bully people. In a week before, a woman in her 70s was handcuffed and removed for not wearing a mask.
Jesus.
This is what's happening. And so it brings back to my initial point. And really, every time I was in that Capitol, I was schooling these highway patrol. Where's your oath? Where's your allegiance? Is it to the people? Or is it to the government?
Law enforcement has shown themselves to be to not be to not be employees of the people. They have totally forgotten it, and maybe it's for their retirement or so they don't get fired or whatever else. And I don't know. I lost a lot of respect for them.
Well, and it's hard because I think a lot of them, and again, some of my best friends are highway patrolmen, and I think a lot of these people, men and women, they go into this field because they're good, because they want to do the right thing, they want to protect society. But you're right, we don't need police reformation with racism.
Yeah.
We need it with education. We need it with constitutional education. What is the essence of our country? What's the Fourth Amendment? I mean, can any officer tell us what the Fourth Amendment is? What's the Fifth Amendment? What's the First? Because those things have been really violated this year. And if they can't tell us that, we have strayed. And even with the sheriffs, you can't talk to a police officer about the Constitution because it's so watered down into radical conservatism. You have to use codes with them. That's what they speak. They're code enforcers.
Oh yeah.
And so,
they become revenue officers.
Yeah, and if we don't do something, it's like the brown shirts all over again. But again, I am for the police. There is a place for the police, but we need educated police, and we need sheriffs willing to do the right thing. I will mention, because it's so important, a few things. Number one, the sheriffs all have a bond and an insurance. on them. You can actually make an insurance claim against them for not doing their job, their oaths to you. That, I have not tried that. You know, it's supposed to be the process that you can do that, and then it puts a ding on their record. It's like if you were to make several house insurance claims, or you keep getting in car accidents or something like that, your insurance goes up. It's hard to get insurance. Well, if these guys have a lot of complaints against them, it's hard to employ them.
Yeah.
Because
So
who's going to insure them?
So the sheriff's bond, now does that bond that is issued for that sheriff, does that cover all of his deputies under him?
I don't know about that. I don't know.
Or
I do know that I was trying to find Herbert and Cox's bonds, and I couldn't find it, and that's a criminal offense. They have to be bonded.
So,
and I think they have to be bonded individually.
So theoretically, if I'm elected the sheriff and I decide not to arrest people selling marijuana, I can be sued by the population for not doing my job.
Yeah. Yeah. Now here's the real critical thing, because as I've been involved and I've seen the schools, I've seen the indoctrination that's coming into the schools. You realize what's happening there. When I was involved with the legislation this year, and I realized the monstrous mess that is, the corruption that's there. When you realize the governor is not for the people, so you know, you start having your world like shut down almost when you start realizing, my heck, all we have left is either the police, and if we don't have the police, all we have left is we the people. So there's something I want your followers to log into and to become a member of, and that's peoplesrights.org. Are you guys familiar with Ammon Bundy?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so peoplesrights.org. If it comes down to it and we don't have police to defend us, we have each other. And so people can connect to peoplesrights.org. You can become a member there. It's free. It's just simply, they'll email you alerts. Hey, this injustice happened to this person. We need to come to their assistance. Would you call these people in defense of them? So if you're ever in a position like that, there was a story of a woman in the Oregon area, and she had a baby, and just before she had the baby, she tested positive for COVID. Well, after the baby was delivered, they took the baby right from her. She didn't get to see it. She didn't get to hold it. She didn't get a nurse or anything. And they said, you have to go into isolation. You got COVID. You can't be around your baby. So who's she supposed to call? She calls the police. Are they going to do anything? No, they're going to side with the hospital. Does she have time or money for an attorney? So guess what? She called People's Rights. 6,000 people showed up or called in her defense to that hospital. The hospital was so overwhelmed by the amount of people that supported her. They said, take your baby back, just go.
Good.
And that's what we need to do. It's going to come down to people uniting together.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, though it's true. I mean, you know.
Well, did the baby get COVID afterwards?
I don't think so. I mean, who knows if the woman even had it? I don't think she had any symptoms.
How many
False positives.
how many infant and how many under 10 mortalities? How many under 10 hospitalizations have we had for COVID?
I heard somebody who was on my feed. He actually did the research. He's like, we've only had one 14-year-old contract this, like allegedly contract this.
Huh. I had it. I went right through the middle of it. And and I'm not going to say that my experience is tantamount to everyone's, but it was less than the last time I had the flu.
Yeah.
I just couldn't go to work for 10 days.
I'm pretty sure I had it because I won't participate in the testing, but I'm pretty sure I had it back in November. And
I wouldn't have participated either, but I had to for my job. But
isn't that crummy? It's just pure fascism.
It is. Now that's the difference. I don't think the government can mandate this. I don't have an issue with a business saying, look, I want my business to wear masks, be it because I believe it works, or I want the people who come here to feel a certain way about my business. I'm okay with that. That's the personal rights of the business owner. I just don't like when a government comes down and does this massive mandate across the state. I don't like when the governor or the mayor or anyone, the the county commissioners, whatever, when they want to say, look, we're going to fine you, we're going to come after you, I don't think the government has a place for that. First of all, the facts are out. Most government officials are only semi-competent. Like, they can, if they must, tie their shoes. That's about the extent of what they're capable of doing.
Well, and what you're talking about is a free market. And a free market works without government interference. And I'm all for capitalism. I'm all for a free market, but we can't have government behind the scenes threatening if you don't do this or restrict your capacity, or then we're going to fine you, because that's not how a free market works. So how many of these businesses, and it's all under the guise of a business can do what they want.
Yeah.
I think how many of them would be participating in this? Nobody wants to wear a mask. Not very many.
Well, I think you look at the big box businesses would have kept. I think any business that's multi-state would have definitely done that, because they're pandering to the geniuses in the blue states, and they're going to continue to pander that way. I think you might have seen a little bit of it from some of the small businesses, niche businesses, but I think your average business would have done, your average gas station, probably your average regional grocery store probably wouldn't have done any of it.
Well, and I even started looking into this because I started calling this out on businesses. You can't play it both ways. We have anti-discriminatory laws in Utah. That's not only the Civil Rights Act that protects against, religious discrimination, racial, gender identification, or anything like that, but we have one with medical in our state. So businesses can't play it both ways, and businesses have signed on with the cities to have a business license, and they sign a contract that says, I'm not going to discriminate for any of these reasons. And medical is one of them. Mm-hmm. And so, they're a public accommodation. Even the private ones, they are on public property. They're a public accommodation, and they have to make accommodations. And so, you can't play it both ways. You either have a free market or you don't.
Well, a free market allows you to discriminate. I mean, why should I cater to somebody I don't want to cater to if it's a free market?
Well, and that's just it. Or that's where the dilemma that the founders had, because they wanted to trust that people were innately good enough that they would make moral decisions. So the difference between us and animals is we have a conscience. I think most of us are good and we're going to do the right thing. If we actually said no blacks allowed and we posted that, I think somebody did that in Chicago. It was either with blacks Cleveland, or it was with Jews. This was recently. That bar folded. Because they were like, I'm not going to go there if they're going to discriminate like that. Like, the market will regulate itself. The question is do we need government to nanny us? Do we need them to legislate morals and values and virtues? I mean, we're either capable of handling that ourselves or we're not. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's quite a dumb move to try to say. See, capitalism is the worship of the customer. In capitalism, the customer is your God, and you do everything to appease your God. You want to introduce or distribute needs and wants to a customer. That's what it is. And to say, I don't want a customer, well, that's a dumb move.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I wouldn't support a business that did that.
No.
But at the same time, it's like David said, if we have a really nasty customer come in, somebody, why should we be obligated to service them? But, somebody brought out the whole no shoes, no shirt, no service thing. Uh-huh. Did you know there's actually racial foundations with that? Really? So back in the day, they knew that poor people were generally colored people, right? Uh-huh. Who didn't have shoes or who didn't have a shirt under the overalls. So the only way they could get out of not, when the 1964 civil rights thing came, the only way they could work around that is to start saying, we're not going to serve you unless you have shoes and a shirt.
Huh.
So
I always thought it was
it's
about they didn't want to see the nips.
I don't know.
Huh.
I don't know, but it's kind of an interesting rabbit hole to go down, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
that
you know
is.
what? I bet you the moment someone walks into a Denny's with their Ku Klux Klan outfit on, all of a sudden it's like, oh, you know what? It's cool to discriminate. I'm just saying.
Well-
That's exactly what'll happen if you continue on having all these jurisdictions about who can go where, and this is the threat that I'm putting on you if you don't comply with that mandate. And you know, it'll always work both ways. And the truth is, it's just businesses have to do what government wants, because that's the psychology they're going to, and constraints that they're going to place on them. And that's just the reality of the story. It's like you got a kid who misbehaves and you're like, I promise to get you ice cream if you behave today. And then he behaves today. And guess what? You totally forgot to get him ice cream on the way home.
Might that be part of the reason they require business licenses?
Yeah, that's the promise of ice cream on the way home if you're good today. It's a false narrative where there's no such thing as free market capitalism in a government environment. It's kind of like, you know, it's a little bit utopian to really think.
Man, I am selling Dave on this anarchy thing quick.
I just
There's a
I just want more
place for
beer,
government.
Jared. I'm just trying to be nice to get more
Yes,
beer.
there is a place for government in the middle of the ocean on a sinking ship. It doesn't
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
take on water super fast, but it must be taking on water.
Well, we definitely have to keep it in check. And
Well,
so I don't know
and
where the
that's-
sheriff thing goes.
That's
where
the
sheriff
thing.
Goes,
I'm
I'm
gonna
just going to push it.
I'm gonna lay out an argument to you.
Okay.
You have to go to the government to have the government adjudicate that the government broke the law. Do you understand? That's what you're doing.
Mhm.
That is an uphill battle.
Yeah, it is. Well, and that's why I have all of the Utah big groups behind me. And it's interesting. They don't always get along. They don't always agree. But thankfully, I get along with all of them. And thankfully, all of them agree with what I'm doing because it is the due process.
Yeah.
It is so critical. And I'm proving a point. They don't have our backs with us. And so, again, if we have nothing else and the system is broken and all we have is each other, if that's what it comes down to, if our government doesn't stop and they keep becoming more draconian and enforcing more lockdowns, do you know what it's going to mean? It's going to mean you and I and David and everybody around us has to lock arms and say, no, we're not going to do this.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's gonna lead us to a path where the words of Thomas Jefferson has to come true, you know. And we've avoided those words for what? I don't know. 260 years.
Well, look at what happened on January 6th. Look at what happened towards all of January. They put guards around the nation's capital
Mm-hmm.
and they put barbed wire. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because there were millions of people supporting our President Trump. I mean, you know, there were millions of people that were like, we don't want this election stolen. And the only thing government has to fear is an educated, united people.
Oh yeah.
And I wish that people would wake up. I do. I don't know how to wake people up anymore. I think it's an evolutionary process and it's a personal journey. And I can't give that to somebody if they're not willing to see or hear it. So.
Well, I will say this: whether or not you do find that code, that state code that will allow you to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish, or whether or not that state code is right or wrong, or if you're naughty or nice, or if you get ice cream on the way home or not, I totally support you.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I would love to watch Cox get arrested. Just for that
we all?
alone, I am with you 100%. I don't know.
Okay, so here's what's going to happen. I'm gathering people and I'm communicating. I'll probably communicate with you guys later and anybody else who has a voice. When it comes time, people's rights is chomping at the bit. They're like, just tell us when. Because they want to show up in numbers at the sheriff's office.
Good.
Both of them. We've got to say, what is going on with this? I need people behind this because it's all we have left.
Yeah, watching him come out in handcuffs, walking down the state capitol, would be like that ice cream I was promised all my life. It really would.
It'd harken back. You'd almost wonder for a minute if we weren't in Illinois, because it seems like Illinois, every 4 governors gets arrested. It'd feel kind of nostalgic. Yeah. You're welcome on any time, and will you please come back on and update us on anything that's going on? We do want to, as much as we do get involved, we want to be involved. I personally try to ride under the radar when it comes to government, because I think that they're an abhorrent, evil institution. Point blank. I think the government is evil. They're thieves. They're robbers. They're criminals. I want to see all of them at least have to stand up and account for what they did. That's just how I see it. All of them, any group of guys or group of people that wants to get together and say, oh, I feel like I can take people's wealth and prosperity and life and sleep good at night.
I think it's a better analogy for like saying the ring of power. We can use this to do good. And then you put it on, and then all of a sudden you're in this ethereal evil world. And
whatever it is. Well, I mean, of course they think they can use it to do good because, like you said, they captured the schools. It's not right now that our schools been captured. Our schools were captured the minute Horace Mann brought that shit over the ocean. It was captured the instant. The instant. Ever since then, they've worked on a design to make it so that parents no longer can get their ideals to the schools. You go into the school, and the school talks about how George Washington, they start with little kids. He could never tell a lie because he had some bullshit story. They talk about how Lincoln freed the slaves. He didn't free a single fucking slave. He only freed the slaves in states that were in rebellion. All the northern states that had slaves, Delaware, Maryland, the fucking state he was sitting in, he didn't free any slaves there. Only states that he didn't own property of. And the minute he got them back, they got their slavery back. So yeah, no, it's time to shatter all this shit,
Yeah, we definitely have a mess. We have a mess.
I'll tell you, Woodrow Wilson worked for the betterment of the nation. Well, he sold our money downriver. Tell you that FDR saved us from the Great Depression. Yeah, that's what he was doing when he's killing all the pigs and stomping all the goddamn cotton. Yeah, he wasn't saving us from the Depression. He made it last 12 years.
Yeah. We definitely have a dirty history.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good moments. There's a lot of heroic moments, and that is what I call upon. It's like, come on, guys, this is our heritage. This is what America stands for. We're the last, allegedly free nation, and we have to act like it.
Yeah.
If we don't, Ammon Bundy said, the most dangerous thing you can do is put on a mask, not for health reasons, but because of the message it gives your government.
Compliance.
And they have the right to tell you what to do with your body.
Well, this is the next big test. The big test they had during World War I, when they started the rationing, and during World War II, where they rationed again, but not as much. Those were big tests. Those are tests laid on a nation from a government. And right now we're in a test, and we failed. The government has seen that they can run us whatever they want. Tiananmen Square is right around the corner for us, where kids will try to at least speech, and we'll march tanks in and run people over.
Yeah. So that's where we lock arms.
Anyways, yeah, I agree. And we definitely want to get involved. Help you out wherever we can. I don't have any personal dislike or hatred for Cox. He signed the constitutional carry bill, so as far as that goes, I like him better than every other governor I've had. But
keep in mind, Cox ran the task force for COVID.
Oh yeah.
He's the one that
But
made the decisions. So
he-
he sold us to socialism very quick.
he also did it on commands from his boss, but that doesn't mean I like it. I'm not standing up for the guy, because you're going to be hard stretched finding me standing up for a government person, be it a government employee or a government official. You know, granted, I've been a government employee before in my life a couple times too, but
We all pay taxes, Jared. That means you're employed
I
by
know,
the government.
we all get raped. No, employment. If you run the sandwich shop and the mafia comes in once a week and points a gun at you and maybe roughs you up behind the counter and then steals that week's protection money, that doesn't mean you're employed by them. That means you're being robbed.
Call it what you will, my friend.
Just because our government does it once a year. And by God, they're smart about it. They said, oh, no, we better not have them pay taxes out of their own pocketbook. Let's make it a tax that comes from their business in their name. Otherwise, they might notice how much we're raping them.
Oh, so true.
That's
So
a big
true.
thing. If they did away with payroll tax next week, we would have a revolution. 1 week, we would have a revolution. Once you saw how much of your money went out the door to them for what you get, yeah, it'd get ugly. Anyways,
Yeah.
we've kept you on here a little over an hour. We'll cut you loose, but we want you to come back. Let us know what's going on. Email me any links you want shared in the show notes. We'll share them in the show notes, and they'll be on there for people to find, whether you're on a podcast form, YouTube, or BitChute, wherever else. And you can just go right to show notes, and we'll have hyperlinks in there. But thank you very much for coming on. I don't know what you did before they sent you home. They made a fucking mistake sending you home. they made a goddamn mistake not letting you do whatever you did before. They gave you some free time and you gunned for it. And I like it.
No, I tell you what, call it a calling. Call it just something I felt called to do. But and
Can
wherever I'm guided, I'll go.
Can I ask what you did before a year and a half ago?
I'm a mother of 6. I've only got 2 left at home, but I've been in a master's program for mental health.
Uh-huh.
And 2020 was like, I just had this impression, get back on social media and gather and educate. And then just slowly by slowly, people have come my way and ideas have come my way, and I felt right about it and took off and ran with it. So that's what I did. I mean, having an argument with my senator, who's an attorney, and who, treated me condescendingly, that I'm not intelligent enough because I can't talk law because I'm not an attorney. And I just said, I don't have to be an attorney to talk law. I can just read law.
Oh, well.
And we can have a conversation.
Not to mention, let's talk about how our law has nothing to do with intelligence. It's all, what did they decide before on something semi-common to this?
Well, there's really something to be said about, and now don't get me wrong, I'm not one of those that's married to a political party, and I certainly don't undyingly support Trump. He is the better option. But I will say one thing he did was he showed that we don't have to have a career politician to be in office. And I was watching a podcast with Candace Owens, where she was speaking with a really successful woman that taught at Princeton, and she has 5 degrees in the Ivy League schools. And the one thing she said towards the end of the podcast to help this country is to have people run for election that are statesmen and not politicians. We need fresh people. We need fresh ideas.
Where's the statesman? Shit.
Yeah.
No, here's what Trump did. Okay. During Reagan, everyone calls them neocons, but let's call them what they are. They're Trotskyite socialists who saw that the Democrat Party back then was weak-willed. So they wanted a party to take over. And they jumped onto the Republican bandwagon in the 60s, but they got real scared during Reagan's rhetoric. And so they've been maneuvering, gaining power. We call them neoconservatives, but they are Trotskyite socialists. Bush Sr., Bush Jr., all of them. All of the ones that go on CNN now and say, oh, I'm a Republican, and they clutch their pearls and whatever, they're socialists. Now, they may not understand they're Trotskyite socialists, but they want the government to be in charge of and lay out a floor plan for everything you do in your life. And that's what we have. Well, Trump took us back to a paleo-conservative ideal, which is another fancy word that most people haven't heard of, but it's the traditional conservative. It's the ones that, to the buildup of World War I, they called isolationists. They didn't want to get involved in shit overseas. They wanted to just stay here, not have any drastic change. Just kind of, the government's job was to have a general upkeep of the land that we sat on, and the people manage their lives. And Trump scared them, and that's why you got all the Republicans came out. That's why you had the what was that pedophile network, the Lincoln Project, right? Was that their name? Anyways, pedophile network. Yeah, there are a whole bunch of pedophiles. I don't know, like 6 of them got caught or some shit. It's, people you run with, I guess. That's why they all came out. Because they saw, wait, this is a guy that wants a government that doesn't get involved in your daily life. That doesn't, want to, touch everything you do and have a floor plan for every decision you have. He just wants to kind of upkeep of the land. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, that's interesting history.
Now Trump fell short of that. But I don't think that's because Trump didn't have any ideation. I mean, honestly, when Trump ran, I thought he did it on a bar bet. And then when he's like, oh, shit, I won. Fuck. No, what'd I do? Honestly, I think that. I don't think he planned on getting the headway. And Hillary definitely didn't. When she pulled the Pied Piper, Operation Pied Piper, when she got CNN and MSNBC to talk about him all the time, she thought that's because she could beat him. Well, apparently she didn't realize people known her for a minute. They all fucking hate her.
Well, we definitely are in a state of affairs, aren't we, with our I kind of pulled my head out of DC. I was just like,
yeah,
it's just a mess. I'm going to focus on our state.
And that's a good idea.
You can get more accomplished.
Yeah. I mean, what can we do? I mean, Biden is a joke. I don't know. I don't know how anybody could look at that and still follow it. I mean, maybe that's how they felt about Trump. Again, I'm totally willing to look at Trump and say, I don't like XYZ about him.
Yeah.
I think he made this mistake or that mistake, but it wasn't until I actually did my research and I looked at what he was working on and behind the scenes that the news won't tell you. I was like, oh, he's doing some good things, and I can get behind these good things. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like Prager said, you've got 2 doors. One said man-eating tiger, and the other one said maybe man-eating tiger. Which door are you going to go through? I mean, I'm going to go through the maybe man-eating tiger because I might make it out of that. But yeah, no, it's I don't know. I don't see any way we can steer the national ship around. I can just continually talk shit about it. The state ship, I don't know if we can change that. I think when push comes to shove, they'll just reach out for their big brothers back east, and get them to come out and support them. But I think you're doing it the right way. I mean, you're doing it intelligently. You're doing the legwork. You're reading through those dry books and enjoying it. But whatever, they should have kept that. Man, they released you onto them. They're in trouble.
Well, and here's the exciting part. Like I said, the exciting part was that Stu Peters has 72 million followers, and names were mentioned. Because who am I? I mean, I've had former congressmen call me and say, I know who you are. And I'm like, how did you hear who I am? And maybe somebody tipped off Sheriff Buchanan. But, and maybe my senator was shocked and put a threat to Utah County Sheriff and said, we don't want you firing or arresting anybody. I'm sure there's things like that going on.
Oh, yeah. But
it's like, do they not know? I want our sheriffs to know that we have a huge amount of people backing them up.
Mm-hmm.
So what's more important? We're putting these sheriffs on trial to make a decision. And I don't think it's only a trial of the land. I also think it's a spiritual trial, because there's an element of liberty with Christianity. And I think that's powerful when you look at there's accountability not only to people but to God,
Mm-hmm.
with where you're gonna defend liberty and under that oath.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, it's a big thing, and I'm sure the sheriff is avoiding you for political reasons. I can guarantee it. And
so the best thing we can do is just expose it. So I mean,
well, yeah, and that's the thing. Keep getting the word out. Keep drawing more people to you. I think you should start a Facebook group, a Facebook page,
A podcast.
a podcast, a Twitter page.
my husband says that. He says, you got to start a podcast. Somebody else told me that. I do have a location I could, and I've been brainstorming that idea, but
Yeah, and any help I can give, I'll throw help at it too.
We got a location you could use.
Yeah, where are you located at?
I'm in Davis County.
Davis
I'm-
County? Might be
Yeah,
a little
pretty-
ways away.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I can help you out with that. There's a way to do it, but definitely, you know, but it's all about getting the word out. You should, you know, whatever group you can start, however you can get more eyes on it, more people involved, you know, let people start arguing it, and then let them, through their failures of argument, see their lapse in judgment.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know, because let's face it, last year was a load of horse shit. It was rough. It was.
I don't think it's going away.
Nope.
I think there's more to come, and it's so critical that we wake up and lock arms
Yep.
in a united effort, because that's what it's going to take.
Yeah. Yeah. I think. Well, I know it's not going away at my day job. That's not happening. We'll be stuck in this, goose stepping our way into the future anyway.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
It's terrible. But whatever they did, they should have let you just keep doing what you're doing. Boy, they sicked you loose on themselves, making it so that you had a fire in your belly. You're just listening to you, how you're reading through Utah code.
They should have gave you ice cream.
I'll bet there's not a DA in the last 100 years that's read the book you read.
Well, here's what's frightening. The
That
DA
is
that most
frightening.
likely has our case is Levitt. And so when I responded to the investigator and he said, it's in the DA's office, we'll update you, here's your case number. I said, which DA? Is it Levitt? Because Levitt was the one that is fining a family $10,000 for having a Halloween party.
So Levitt should be in handcuffs as well.
It's like, yeah, like he's going to do anything. I said, we better put fears and biases aside and do the right thing and uphold the written law.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I will continue to speak out about this as I continue to get public speaking engagements. I'll keep talking.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome on here anytime.
Well,
Definitely.
I appreciate it. I'll let you know if some juicy news comes.
All you got to do is just shoot us a message, even if you just need 5 minutes or whatever. We'll chalk you in. We record every Thursday. We'll chalk you in on any Thursday.
Now,
Okay.
before we all leave, I would like to talk about a speaking engagement that's going to be happening this Saturday. Now, this Saturday, they are having a Second Amendment rally at Salt Lake City. I think it's around 11 or 12 o'clock this in the afternoon. And, if you don't agree with all the new gun laws that are being proposed throughout the country, go to the rally, show your support. And if you got a message, I bet you they'll let you talk. I bet you'll have an opportunity to say your piece. So, these weekends, that's when we're off. That's when we don't have to work, usually, some of us.
Yeah.
Government workers.
Yeah. You.
So go to the rally if you can. Try to go to the rally and say your piece. Be proactive. Support
Safety
liberty.
officers, they don't sweat, they perspire. But yes, yeah, you should go in there, make an appearance and say, hey, look, this is what I've got going on. At least see if they'll let you
I've spoken a lot
talk.
at rallies. I have spoken a lot at rallies. And yeah, a few of my, I know Utah Patriots is putting it on, but there's a few other that are kind of coordinating with them and getting it done. So yeah, I plan to be there.
Good, good, good. Yeah, this is, man, I still can't believe you read through that book. Read through that.
I told you it was
tome.
like a treasure hunt. I was like, yay.
Oh,
The more I read and the more I found, the more excited I got. I was like, we are so protected. We have a good case. I'm very confident we have a solid case, but
I-
it's not my negligence. That if it's not moving, it's not me, it's them. So,
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to know who voted what on this SB 195. I'm going to dig into that a little more. I want to know if our local senators did, and then I want to ask them, why do you think the government should be grasping that much power?
So their argument to you will always be they already had that power. It was already in the written code. My argument to them is you had an opportunity to change it with all the
Yeah.
damages that happened to people and you did
So
nothing.
then I'll ask them, I'll follow up with, then why do you think you need that power? Why do you want to maintain that power? Why do you want to pass that power on to, okay, you think you're a good guy. You may even think the guy that beat you is a good guy, but what about the dipshit that beats them? What about if, say, someone like AOC, decides to move to Utah and run for state senator? Why would you want to keep that power in there? Just like when old Harry Reid changed the rules on that filibustering about getting someone into the Supreme Court. Everyone told him, this is going to bite you in the ass. It's going to bite you in the ass. Well, it bit the Democrats in the ass last year. So what do they think? Why would you want to grab that much power? Because it will be turned over to your enemy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like I said, they might be able to tie their shoes. They're fucking retarded, every one of them. But anyways, thank you for coming on. Seriously, anytime. I think you're doing great stuff. And
Thank you.
yeah, any support we can give, let us know. I won't be able to make it to any rallies on Saturday because I'll be working, but Dave can be there.
Okay.
He'll
All
take
right.
his wife.
Okay.
Maybe we'll tie his wife in with you because she's got fire in the belly too. God, you guys would be dangerous. It'd get rough up in there.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. But thank you very much. And we hope to have you on again real soon.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right. See ya.
And hey, Jared, before we sign off,
Yeah.
I'd like to tell the audience, hey, could you go to BitChute? Could you go to YouTube? Could you smash a like button?
Yeah. Show us some love.
Let the technocrats know that we do exist and they should pay attention to us and probably ban us sooner than later.
Yeah. Yeah.
No one's
My
banned us.
other show got its first show deleted off of YouTube the other day.
Congratulations.
Yes.
And you guys have heard of, oh, I got somebody turn on the TV.
That's okay.
You guys have heard of YouTube?
Huge tube? Like huge?
YouTube?
It's huge.
UGE Tube. Yeah. I
Yeah.
got connected with somebody that started. It's a conservative, like YouTube, but it's conservative. That's another one
I'm
too.
gonna check that out. I heard Trump's starting his own social media site. I'd like to see what that is. It's probably, something written in there. If it's 2 a.m. and you're on the crap or working on a Taco Bell, it's gonna run better or something. I hope so.
I tell you, I mean, Ben Shapiro predicted it. He said America's going to go through a divorce. We're going to have conservatism. We're going to have leftism, and there you go. So, well,
Yep.
thank you guys. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, and before we sign off, you can hang out for this if you want. It's just a news story that I saw the other day that I wanted to mention.
I love current events.
Yeah. Where's it at? You heard that you heard that Oklahoma has a what do you call it, a bounty for Bigfoot right now, didn't you? It's like $5 million.
Now you know he's real if they're offering that much kind of money.
Oh man, I'm telling you. Where's it at? Oh, well, it was okay. There we go. So Twila City had a school employee disciplined after taxpayer-funded trip to a virtual conference. So 5 employees with Twila County School District will have to pay back thousands of taxpayer dollars after they went ahead on a trip for a conference that was changed to a virtual format. So it sounds like they had a conference in Savannah, Georgia. The employees had booked the trip to Savannah, and then the coup hit, and they said, okay, it's going to be a virtual conference. How we're going to run it. And 5 of the school teachers says, nah, or maybe janitors. I don't know. It doesn't say they were specifically teachers. But yeah, they went to Savannah anyway, which Savannah is one of my favorite cities on earth. I love that place. And yeah, they went anyway, and they did it on our dime. And they showed up there, and then I guess what? Did the virtual conference from their hotel room on, Tybee Island, sitting out there with the surf running up over their toes. So yeah, but they got to pay that back. And I guarantee it wasn't a cheap trip. Guarantee it. All right. Thank you very much, Alena. You have a wonderful night. Keep up the good work. Let us know how we can help.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Yes.
Take care.
Okay, take care, guys. We'll see ya.
Bye.